The United Kingdom general election of 2017 took place on the 8th of June 2017. Each of the 650 parliamentary constituencies elected one Member of Parliament, MP, to the House of Commons, the lower house of Parliament. Under the terms of the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011, an election had not been due until the 7th of May 2020, but a call by Prime Minister Theresa May for a snappy election was ratified by the necessary supermajority in a 522-13 vote in the House of Commons on the 19th of April 2017. The Conservative Party, which had governed since 2010, as a senior coalition partner until 2015, and as a majority government thereafter, was defending a majority of 12 against the Labour Party, the official opposition led by Jeremy Corbyn. May hoped to secure a larger parliamentary majority for the Conservative Party in order to strengthen her hand in forthcoming Brexit negotiations. Opinion polls had shown consistent leads for the Conservatives over Labour. From a 20-point lead, the Conservatives' lead began to diminish in the final weeks of the campaign. In a surprising result, the Conservatives made a net loss of 13 seats with 42.4% of the vote, while Labour made a net gain of 30 seats with a 40.0% vote share. The Conservative Party won its highest vote share since 1983. Securing second place, Labour achieved its greatest share of the vote since 2001, and made a net gain of seats for the first time since 1997. Its 9.6 percentage point increase in vote share was its largest in a general election since 1945. These gains came at the expense of the smaller parties. The Scottish National Party and the Liberal Democrats both lost support in percentage point terms, while support for the UK Independence Party, which enjoyed a significant portion of the popular vote in 2015, was largely wiped out. The SNP, which had won 56 of the 59 Scottish constituencies in 2015, returned with 21 fewer seats. The Liberal Democrats, however, made a net gain of 4 seats. In Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, won 10 seats, while Sinn Féin won 7. Negotiation positions following the UK's invocation of Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union in March 2017 to leave the EU also featured significantly in the campaign, as did the regular major issues of the economy, education, jobs and the National Health Service. The election campaign was interrupted by 2 major terrorist attacks, in Manchester and London, with national security becoming a prominent issue during the latter weeks. Following the result, the Conservatives entered into talks with the Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, of Northern Ireland, whose 10 seats could allow for the formation of a minority Conservative government with DUP support. Electoral system Each parliamentary constituency of the United Kingdom elects one MP to the House of Commons using the first-past-the-post system. If one party obtains a majority of seats, then that party is entitled to form the government, with its leader as Prime Minister. If the election results in no single party having a majority, then there is a hung parliament. In this case, the options for forming the government are either a minority government or a coalition government. The postponed 6th periodic review of Westminster constituencies is not due to report until 2018, and therefore this general election took place under existing boundaries, enabling direct comparisons with the results by constituency in 2015. Voting eligibility To vote in the general election, one must be on the electoral register, aged 18 or over on polling day, a British, Irish or Commonwealth citizen, a resident at an address in the UK, or a British citizen living abroad who has been registered to vote in the UK in the last 15 years, and not legally excluded from voting, for example a convicted person detained in prison or a mental hospital, or unlawfully at large if she would otherwise have been detained, or a person found guilty of certain corrupt or illegal practices, or disqualified from voting. Peers sitting in the House of Lords. Individuals had to be registered to vote by midnight 12 working days before polling day, the 22nd of May. Anyone who qualified as an anonymous elector had until midnight on the 31st of May to register. A person who has 2 homes, such as a university student who has a term time address and lives at home during holidays, may be registered to vote at both addresses, as long as they are not in the same electoral area, but can vote in only one constituency at the general election. On the 18th of May, The Independent reported that more than 1.1 million people between 18 and 35 had registered to vote since the election was announced on the 18th of April. Of those, 591,730 were under the age of 25. Date of the election The Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011 introduced fixed-term parliaments to the United Kingdom, with elections scheduled every 5 years following the general election on the 7th of May 2015. This removed the power of the Prime Minister, using the royal prerogative, to dissolve Parliament before its 5-year maximum length. The Act permits early dissolution if the House of Commons votes by a supermajority of 2/3 of the entire membership of the House. On the 18th of April 2017, the Prime Minister Theresa May announced she would seek an election on the 8th of June, despite previously ruling out an early election. A House of Commons motion to allow this was passed on the 19th of April, with 522 votes for and 13 against, a majority of 509, meeting the required two-thirds majority. The motion was supported by the Conservatives, Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, while the SNP abstained. 9 Labour MPs, 1 SDLP MP and 3 independents, Sylvia Herman and 2 former SNP MPs, Natalie McGarry and Michelle Thompson, voted against the motion. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn supported the early election, as did Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron and the Green Party. The SNP stated that it was in favour of fixed-term parliaments, and would abstain in the House of Commons vote. UKIP leader Paul Nuttall and First Minister of Wales Carwyn Jones criticised May for being opportunistic in the timing of the election, motivated by the then strong position of the Conservative Party in the opinion polls. On the 25th of April, the election date was confirmed as the 8th of June, with dissolution on the 3rd of May. The government announced that it intended for the next parliament to assemble on the 13th of June, with the state opening on the 19th of June. Timetable The key dates are listed below. All times are BST. Parties and candidates Most candidates were representatives of a political party registered with the Electoral Commission. Candidates not belonging to a registered party could use an independent label, or no label at all. The leader of the party commanding a majority of support in the House of Commons is the person who is called on by the monarch to form a government as Prime Minister, while the leader of the largest party not in government becomes the leader of the opposition. Other parties also form shadow ministerial teams. The leaders of the SNP and Plaid Cymru are not MPs, hence, they appoint separate leaders in the House of Commons. The Conservative Party and the Labour Party have been the two biggest parties since 1922, and have supplied all prime ministers since 1935. Both parties changed their leader since the 2015 election. David Cameron, who had been the leader of the Conservative Party since 2005 and Prime Minister since 2010, was replaced in July 2016 by Theresa May following the referendum on the United Kingdom's membership of the European Union. Jeremy Corbyn replaced Ed Miliband as leader of the Labour Party and leader of the opposition in September 2015, and was re-elected leader in September 2016. While the Liberal Democrats and their predecessors had long been the third largest party in British politics, they returned only 8 MPs in 2015 to 49 fewer than at the previous election. Tim Farron became the Liberal Democrat leader in July 2015, following the resignation of Nick Clegg, led by First Minister of Scotland Nicola Sturgeon. The SNP stand only in Scotland and won 56 of 59 Scottish seats in 2015. UKIP, then led by Nigel Farage, who was later replaced by Diane James and then by Paul Nuttall in 2016, won 12.7% of the vote in 2015 but gained only 1 MP, Douglas Carswell, who left the party in March 2017 to sit as an independent. After securing 3.8% of the vote and 1 MP in the previous general election, Green Party leader Natalie Bennett was succeeded by joint leaders Caroline Lucas and Jonathan Bartley in September 2016. Smaller parties that contested the 2015 election and chose not to stand candidates in 2017 included Mebyon Kernow, the Communist Party of Britain, the Scottish Socialist Party and the National Front. Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, Sinn Féin, the Social Democratic and Labour Party, SDLP, the Ulster Unionist Party, UUP, and the Alliance Party contested the 2017 election. Sinn Féin maintained its abstentionist policy. The DUP, Sinn Féin, SDLP, UUP and APNI were all led by new party leaders, changed since the 2015 election. The Conservatives, Greens and 4 other minor parties also stood. Despite contesting 10 seats last time, UKIP did not stand in Northern Ireland. Candidates 3,304 candidates stood for election, down from 3,631 in the previous general election. The Conservatives stood in 637 seats, Labour in 631, including jointly with the Cooperative Party in 50, and the Liberal Democrats in 629. UKIP stood in 377 constituencies, down from 624 in 2015, while the Greens stood in 468, down from 573. The SNP contested all 59 Scottish seats and Plaid Cymru stood in all 40 Welsh seats. In Wales, 213 candidates stood for election. Labour, Conservatives, Plaid Cymru, and Liberal Democrats contested all 40 seats and there were 32 UKIP and 10 Green candidates. In Scotland the SNP, the Conservatives, Labour and the Liberal Democrats stood in all 59 seats while UKIP contested 10 seats and the Greens only 3. Of the 109 candidates in Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin Fine, the SDLP and the Alliance contested all 18 seats, the DUP stood in 17, the UUP in 14 and the Conservatives and Greens stood in 7 each. People Before Profit and the Workers' Party contested 2 seats while Traditional Unionist Voice and the New Citizens Independent Social Thought Alliance stood in 1 each. 4 independents including incumbent Sylvia Herman also stood. Party selection processes. Unlike in previous elections, the timetable of the snap election required parties to select candidates in just under 3 weeks. To meet the 11th of May deadline, Labour required sitting MPs to express their intention to stand, automatically reselecting those that did. Labour advertised for applications from party members for all remaining seats by the 23rd of April, having devolved selections to its Scottish and Welsh parties. Labour's National Executive Committee endorsed all parliamentary candidates on the 3rd of May except for Rochdale, the seat of suspended MP Simon Danczyk. On the 7th of May, Steve Rotherham announced he was standing down as MP for Liverpool Walton following his election as Liverpool City Region Mayor, leaving 5 days to appoint a candidate by close of nominations. The Liberal Democrats had already selected 326 candidates in 2016 and over 70 in 2017 before the election was called. Meetings of local party members from UKIP, the Greens and Plaid Cymru selected their candidates. Parties in Northern Ireland were not believed to have already selected candidates due to the Assembly elections in March. High-profile candidates. Ken Clarke, the father of the House of Commons, had said he would retire in 2020, but opted to stand again in the 2017 election. Former Conservative Employment Minister Esther McVey was selected to contest Taden and Zach Goldsmith was adopted as the Conservative candidate for Richmond Park, having lost the 2016 by-election as an independent after previously serving as the constituency's Conservative MP since 2010. After coming second in the Stoke-on-Trent Central by-election earlier in the year, UKIP leader Paul Nuttall announced he would contest Boston and Skegness. Tony Lloyd, a former Labour MP for Manchester Central who served as Greater Manchester Police and Crime Commissioner from 2012 and interim mayor of Greater Manchester since 2015, was selected to contest Rochdale. The former Labour MP Simon Danczyk stood as an independent candidate, after being banned from standing as a Labour candidate and then leaving the party. A number of former Liberal Democrat ministers who were defeated in 2015 stood for election in their former seats, including Vince Cable in Twickenham, Ed Davey in Kingston and Surbiton, Joe Swinson in East Dunbartonshire, and Simon Hughes in Bermondsey and Old Southwark. After David Ward, the former MP for Bradford East, was dropped as a candidate by the Liberal Democrats for anti-Semitism, he ran as an independent in his former seat. Electoral alliances and arrangements Ahead of the general election, crowdfunding groups such as More United and Open Britain were formed to promote candidates of similar views standing for election, and a progressive alliance was proposed. Former UKIP donor Aaron Banks suggested a patriotic alliance movement. Tactical voting to keep the Conservatives out of government was suggested on social media. Gina Miller, who took the government to court over Article 50, set out plans to tour marginal constituencies in support of pro-EU candidates. Within a few days of the election being announced, the Green Party and the SNP each proposed to collaborate with Labour and the Liberal Democrats to prevent a Conservative majority government. Lib Dem leader Tim Farron quickly reaffirmed his party's opposition to an electoral pact or coalition with Labour, citing electorally toxic Corbyn and concerns over Labour's position on Brexit. On the 22nd of April, the Liberal Democrats also ruled out a coalition deal with the Conservatives and SNP. Labour ruled out an electoral pact with the SNP, Liberal Democrats and Greens. Notwithstanding national arrangements, the Liberal Democrats, the Greens and UKIP indicated they might not stand in every constituency. The Green Party chose not to contest 22 seats in England and Wales explicitly to increase the chance of a progressive candidate beating the Conservatives, including in South West Surrey, the seat of Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, in favour of the National Health Action Party candidate. The Scottish Greens contested just 3 constituencies. The Liberal Democrats agreed to stand down in Brighton Pavilion, after indicating they may not nominate candidates in seats held by strongly pro-Brexit Conservative MPs. UKIP nominated 377 candidates. It was suggested this would help the Conservatives in marginal seats. In Northern Ireland, there were talks between the DUP and UUP. Rather than engaging in a formal pact, the DUP agreed not to contest Fermanagh and South Tyrone, while the UUP chose not to stand in 4 constituencies. On the 8th of May, the SDLP rejected Sinn Féin's call for them to stand aside in some seats. Campaign Background Prior to the calling of the general election, the Liberal Democrats gained Richmond Park from the Conservatives in a by-election, a seat characterized by its high Remain vote in the 2016 EU referendum. The Conservatives held the safe seat of Sleaford and North Hykeham in December 2016. In by-elections on the 23rd of February 2017, Labour held Stoke-on-Trent Central but lost Copeland to the Conservatives, the first time a governing party had gained a seat in a by-election since 1982. The general election comes soon after the Northern Ireland Assembly election on the 2nd of March. Talks on power sharing between the DUP and Sinn Féin had failed to reach a conclusion, with Northern Ireland thus facing either another Assembly election or the imposition of direct rule. The deadline was subsequently extended to the 29th of June. Local elections in England, Scotland and Wales took place on the 4th of May. These saw large gains by the Conservatives, and large losses by Labour and UKIP. Notably, the Conservatives won Metro Mayor elections in Tees Valley and the West Midlands, areas traditionally seen as Labour heartlands. Initially scheduled for the 4th of May, a by-election in Manchester Gordon was cancelled. The seat was contested on the 8th of June along with all the other seats. All parties suspended campaigning for a time in the wake of the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing on the 22nd of May. The SNP had been scheduled to release their manifesto for the election, but this was delayed. Campaigning resumed on the 25th of May. Major political parties also suspended campaigning for a second time on the 4th of June, following the June 2017 London attack. UKIP chose to continue campaigning. There were calls for the polling date to be postponed, but these were rejected. Issues Brexit. The UK's withdrawal from the European Union was a key issue in the campaign. May said she called the snappy election to secure a majority for her Brexit negotiations. UKIP support a clean, quick and efficient Brexit and, launching his party's election campaign, Nuttall stated that Brexit is a job half done and UKIP MPs are needed to see this through to the end. Labour had supported Brexit in the previous parliament, but proposed different priorities for negotiations. The Liberal Democrats and Greens called for a deal to keep the UK in the single market and a second referendum on any deal proposed between the EU and the UK. The Conservative manifesto committed to leaving the single market and customs union but seek a deep and special partnership through a comprehensive free trade and customs agreement. It proposed seeking to remain part of some EU programs where it would be reasonable that we make a contribution and stay as a signatory of the European Convention on Human Rights over the next Parliament and maintain the Human Rights Act during Brexit negotiations. Parliament would be able to amend or repeal EU legislation once converted into UK law, and have a vote on the final agreement. Security. 2 major terrorist attacks took place during the election campaign, with parties arguing about the best way to prevent such events. May, after the second attack, focused on global cooperation to tackle Islamist ideology and tackling the use of the internet by terrorist groups. After the first attack, Labour criticised cuts in police numbers under the Conservative government. Corbyn also linked the Manchester attack to British foreign policy. The Conservatives stated that spending on counter-terrorism for both the police and other agencies had risen. Former Tory strategist Steve Hilton said Theresa May should be resigning, not seeking re-election, because her police cuts and security failures had led to the attacks. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn backed calls for May to resign, but said she should be removed by voters. May said that police budgets for counter-terrorism had been maintained and that Corbyn had voted against counter-terrorism legislation. The Conservative manifesto proposed more government control and regulation of the internet, including forcing internet companies to restrict access to extremist and adult content. After the London attack, Theresa May called for international agreements to regulate the internet. Conservative stances on regulation of internet and social media have been criticized by Liberal Democrats leader Tim Farron, the Open Rights Group and some academic experts on radicalization, Farron likening them to North Korea and China state surveillance and censorship. The UK's nuclear weapons, including the renewal of the Trident system, was also prominent during the campaign. The Conservatives and Liberal Democrats favor Trident renewal. The Labour manifesto commits the party to Trident renewal, but Corbyn declined to speak in favor of the renewal. He also declined to answer whether, as Prime Minister, he would ever use nuclear weapons if the UK were under an imminent nuclear threat. Social care. Social care became a major election issue after the Conservative Party's manifesto included new proposals, which they subsequently changed after criticism. The previous coalition government had commissioned a review by Andrew Dilnote into how to fund social care. Measures that disadvantaged pensioners were also in the Conservative manifesto, eliminating the pension triple lock and winter fuel payments for all pensioners. Scottish independence and the future of the UK. The question of a proposed Scottish Scottish independence referendum is also likely to influence the campaign in Scotland. On the 28th of March 2017, the Scottish Parliament approved a motion for a second independence referendum, suggesting that there had been a material change in the terms of the failed independence referendum in 2014 as a result of the UK's vote to leave the EU. The SNP hopes to hold a second independence referendum once the Brexit terms are clear, but before the UK leaves the EU. May has said her government would not approve an independence referendum before Brexit negotiations have finished. Tuition fees. Labour is thought to have attracted a significant number of student voters with its pledge to abolish tuition fees and bring back student grants. Possible coalitions. Although Labour and the Liberal Democrats have both rejected election pacts with each other and with the Greens and the SNP, and although the Liberal Democrats have also ruled out a coalition deal with the Conservatives campaigned on this theme, using the phrase coalition of chaos. Similar messages against a potential Lib-Lab pact are credited with having secured a Conservative win in the 1992 and 2015 elections. On the 19th of April, May warned against a Labour-SNP-Lib Dem pact that would divide our country. However, after the hung result led the Conservatives to seek up support for a minority government, May and the Conservatives' rhetoric was mocked by opponents. Party campaigns Conservatives. May launched the Conservative campaign with a focus on Brexit, lower domestic taxes and avoiding a Labour-Lib Dem SNP coalition of chaos, but she refused to commit not to raise taxes. On the 30th of April, May stated that it was her intention to lower taxes if the Conservatives won the general election, but only explicitly ruled out raising VAT. May reiterated her commitment to spending 0.7% of GNI on foreign aid. Theresa May hired Linton Crosby, the campaign manager for the Conservatives in the 2015 general election, as well as Barack Obama's 2012 campaign manager, Jim Messina. The Conservative campaign was noted for the use of targeted adverts on social media, in particular attacking Corbyn. The repeated use of the phrase strong and stable in the Conservatives' campaigning attracted attention and criticism. Some expressed concern that the party may have restricted media access to the Prime Minister, while some speculated that an investigation into campaign spending by the Conservatives in the 2015 general election was a factor behind the snap election. On the 10th of May, the Crown Prosecution Service said that despite evidence of inaccurate spending returns, no further action was required. On the 7th of May, the Conservatives promised to replace the 1983 Mental Health Act, to employ an additional 10,000 NHS mental health workers by 2020 and to tackle discrimination against those with mental health problems. May indicated that the Conservatives would maintain their net immigration target, and promised to implement a cap on rip-off energy prices, a policy that appeared in Labour's 2015 manifesto. May indicated she would permit a free vote among Conservative MPs on repealing the ban on fox hunting in England and Wales. On the 11th of May, the Conservatives promised above-inflation increases in defence spending alongside its NATO commitment to spend at least 2% of GDP on defence. In a speech in Tynemouth the next day, May said Labour had deserted working-class voters, criticised Labour's policy proposals and said Britain's future depended on making a success of Brexit. On the 14th of May, the Conservatives proposed a new generation of social housing, paid from the existing capital budget, offering funding to local authorities and changing compulsory purchase rules. The proposals were characterised as an unabashed pitch for Labour voters. However, Labour and the GMB trade union criticised the government's past record on workers' rights. Unveiling the Conservative manifesto in Halifax on the 18th of May, May promised a mainstream government that would deliver for mainstream Britain. It dropped the 2015 pledge to not raise income tax or national insurance contributions but maintained a commitment to freeze VAT. New sovereign wealth funds for infrastructure, rules to prevent foreign takeovers of critical national infrastructure and institutes of technology were also proposed. The manifesto was noted for its intervention in industry, lack of tax cuts and increased spending commitments on public services. On Brexit, it committed to leaving the single market and customs union while seeking a deep and special partnership and promised a vote in Parliament on the final agreement. The manifesto was noted for containing similar policies to those found in Labour's 2015 general election manifesto. The manifesto also proposed reforms to social care in England that would raise the threshold for free care from £23,250 to £100,000, while include property in the means test and permitting deferred payment after death. After attracting substantial media attention, 4 days after the manifesto launch, May stated that the proposed social care reforms would now include an absolute limit on costs in contrast to the rejection of a cap in the manifesto. She criticized the fake portrayal of the policy in recent days by Labour and other critics, who had termed it a dementia tax. Evening Standard editor George Osborne called the policy change a U-turn. Labour. Corbyn launched the Labour campaign focusing on public spending, and argued that services were being underfunded, particularly education. Corbyn emphasized Labour's support for a jobs-first Brexit that safeguards the future of Britain's vital industries. Labour proposed the creation of 4 new bank holidays, marking the feast days of the patron saints of the United Kingdom's constituent nations. On the 27th of April, the party pledged to build 1 million new homes over 5 years. Labour's proposal to employ 10,000 new police officers was overshadowed when Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott cited incorrect figures in an LBC interview on how it would be funded. Labour later confirmed that the £300 million cost would be funded by reversing cuts to capital gains tax, although it was noted that the party had also pledged some of those savings towards other expenditure plans. On the 7th of May, Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell ruled out rises in VAT, and in income tax and employee national insurance contributions for those with earnings below £80,000 per year. The following day, Labour outlined plans to ban junk food, TV adverts and parking charges at NHS hospitals. Labour promised an additional £4.8 billion for education, funded by raising corporation tax from 19 to 26. A draft copy of Labour's manifesto was leaked to the Daily Mirror and the Daily Telegraph on the 10th of May. It included pledges to renationalise the national grid, the railways and the Royal Mail, and create publicly owned energy companies. The draft was noted for including commitments on workers' rights, a ban on fracking, and the abolition of tuition fees in England. The draft manifesto included a commitment to the Trident nuclear deterrent, but suggested a future government would be extremely cautious about using it. The next day, Labour's Clause V meeting endorsed the manifesto after amendments from shadow cabinet members and trade unions present. In a speech at Chatham House on the 12th of May, Corbyn set out his foreign policy, saying he would reshape Britain's foreign relations, avoid the use of nuclear weapons, and while Labour supported Trident renewal, he would initiate a defence review in government. Corbyn stated that he would halt all weapons sales from the UK to Saudi Arabia, citing the violations of human rights in the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. After the June 2017 London attack, Corbyn said that a conversation should take place with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states that have funded and fueled extremist ideology. On the 14th of May, Labour revealed plans to extend stamp duty by introducing a financial transactions tax, which McDonnell claimed would raise up to £5.6 billion per year. The next day, Corbyn set out plans to spend £37 billion on the NHS in England over a 5-year parliament, including £10 billion on IT upgrades and building repairs. Labour said it would raise an additional £48.6 billion in tax revenue per year and insisted its policies were fully costed, though it was noted no costings were provided for its nationalisation pledges. Compared to the leaked draft, the manifesto was noted for toughening Labour's position on defence and Trident, confirming that outside the EU free movement would have to end, qualifying support for airport expansion, and clarifying the party's stance on Israel-Palestine, as well as other changes. After initial confusion, Labour clarified it would not reverse the government's freeze on most working-age benefits. SNP. The SNP, keen to maintain its position as the third largest party in the House of Commons, made the need to protect Scotland's interests in the Brexit negotiations a central part of its campaign. With the polls closing, Nicola Sturgeon told the Today programme that SNP could support a Labour government on an issue-by-issue basis in the event of a hung parliament, and that she would be open to forming a progressive alternative to a conservative government. Liberal Democrats. Central themes of the Liberal Democrat campaign were an offer of a second referendum on any eventual Brexit deal and a desire for the UK to stay in the single market. The party reportedly targeted seats which had voted to remain in the EU, such as Twickenham, Oxford West and Abingdon, and Vauxhall. Bob Marshall-Andrews, a Labour MP from 1997 to 2010, announced he would support the Liberal Democrats. The party reported a surge in membership after the election was called, passing 100,000 on the 24th of April, having grown by 12,500 in the preceding week. The party also reported raising £500,000 in donations in the first 48 hours after May's announcement of an early election. An early issue raised in the campaign was Tim Farron's views, as a Christian, regarding gay sex and LGBT rights. After declining to state whether he thought gay sex was a sin, Farron affirmed that he believed neither being gay nor having gay sex are sinful. The party proposed raising income tax by 1p to fund the NHS NHS, and maintaining the triple lock on the state pension. The Liberal Democrats also promised an additional £7 billion to protect per-pupil funding in education. They said it would be partly funded by remaining in the EU single market. The party pledged on the 11th of May to accept 50,000 refugees from Syria over 5 years, with Farron saying that the £4.3 billion costs would over time be repaid in taxes by those refugees that settle in Britain. On the 12th of May, the party revealed plans to legalize cannabis and extend paid paternity leave. Farron proposed financial incentives for graduates joining the armed forces and committed to NATO's 2% of GDP defense spending target. The next day, the Liberal Democrats promised to end the cap on public sector pay increases and repeal the Investigatory Powers Act. On the 16th of May, the Liberal Democrats proposed an entrepreneur's allowance to review business rates and to increase access to credit. UKIP. Paul Nuttall announced that UKIP's manifesto will seek to ban the burqa, outlaw Sharia law, impose a temporary moratorium on new Islamic schools and require annual checks against female genital mutilation (FGM) for high-risk girls. UKIP's deputy leader Peter Whittle confirmed that beekeepers would be exempt from the ban on face coverings, and Margot Parker argued that nuns' habits were not included in the ban as they don't cover their face. In response to the proposed burqa ban, UKIP's Foreign Affairs spokesperson James Carver resigned, labeling the policy misguided. Despite losing all 145 of the seats it was defending in the 2017 local elections, but gaining one from Labour in Burnley, Nuttall insisted voters would return to UKIP in the general election. On the 8th of May, UKIP proposed a net migration target of 0 within 5 years. On fishing, UKIP wanted to see a 200-mile exclusive economic zone, where all fish caught by foreign vessels in British waters must be landed, processed and sold in Britain. Television debates Within hours of the election being announced, Corbyn, Farron and Sturgeon called for televised debates. The Prime Minister's office opposed the idea of any televised debates during the campaign. Despite the opposition of the Prime Minister, on the 19th of April the BBC and ITV announced they planned to host leaders' debates, as they had done in the 2010 and 2015 elections. Whether or not May takes part, Labour subsequently ruled out Corbyn taking part in television debates without May. Broadcaster Andrew Neil also separately interviewed the party leaders in the Andrew Neil interviews on BBC One, starting on the 22nd of May with Theresa May. There were also due to be interviews with Paul Nuttall, Tim Farron, Nicola Sturgeon and Jeremy Corbyn during the same week. However, the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing led to the suspension of general election campaigning on 23 and the 24th of May 2017. The interview with Corbyn still went ahead as planned on the 26th of May 2017, and the interviews with the leaders of the smaller parties that had been cancelled in between were rescheduled for later dates. ITV Tonight also ran a series of programs with the major party leaders. Sky News and Channel 4 announced an election program to take place on the 29th of May, where Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn would be individually interviewed by Jeremy Paxman after taking questions from a studio audience. The BBC announced 2 debates to which all 7 main party leaders would be invited, on the 31st of May in Cambridge and the 6th of June in Manchester, to be shown on BBC One. Both Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn had earlier stated they would not attend the 31st of May debate. May stated that she had decided not to attend as she had debated Jeremy Corbyn many times in Parliament, and that she would be meeting the public instead. Corbyn announced on the 31st of May that he had changed his mind and would be attending the BBC leaders' debate in Cambridge, calling on May to do the same. Amber Rudd appeared for the Conservatives. The BBC hosted separate debates for the English regions, and for both Scotland and Wales, and also a question time special with May and Corbyn separately answering questions from voters, on the 2nd of June. This was chaired by David Dimbleby. Sturgeon and Farron were expected to do the same on the 4th of June, but this program was delayed by the June 2017 London attack. It was rescheduled for 9 p.m. on the 5th of June, and the presenter was changed to Nick Robinson. However, the BBC did host 2 back-to-back episodes of a special election program titled Election Questions on the night the 4th of June, after election campaigning had resumed that evening. The first episode took place in Bristol and featured the co-leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, Jonathan Bartley, followed by the leader of the UK Independence Party, Paul Nuttall. The second episode took place in Swansea and featured Leanne Wood, leader of the Welsh political party, Plaid Cymru. The program consisted of each of the party leaders being individually questioned by a studio audience. STV planned to host a live TV debate in Glasgow with 4 Scottish party leaders on the 24th of May, but it was postponed, owing to the Manchester Arena bombing. The debate was rescheduled for Tuesday the 6th of June. Endorsements Newspapers, organizations and individuals have endorsed parties or individual candidates for the election. Politicians not standing members of parliament not standing for re-election other politicians Former UKIP leader Nigel Farage announced that he would not stand, saying he could be more effective as an MEP. UKIP major donor Aaron Banks, who had earlier indicated his intention to stand in Clacton to defeat Douglas Carswell, withdrew in favour of the UKIP candidate after Carswell announced he would be standing down. Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood chose not to contest a Westminster seat, nor did former Labour MP and Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls. Opinion polling and seat projections In the 2015 general election, polling companies underestimated the Conservative Party vote and overestimated the Labour Party vote and so failed to predict the result accurately. Afterwards they started making changes to polling practices. Recommendations from a review by the British Polling Council are likely to result in further changes. Predictions 3 weeks before the vote The first past the post system used in UK general elections means that the number of seats won is not directly related to vote share. Thus, several approaches are used to convert polling data and other information into seat predictions. The table below lists some of the predictions. Predictions 2 weeks before the vote Predictions 1 week before the vote Predictions less than a week before the vote The UK's first past the post electoral system means that national shares of the vote do not give an exact indicator of how the various parties will be represented in Parliament. Different commentators and pollsters currently provide a number of predictions, based on polls and other data, as to how the parties will be represented in Parliament. Lord Ashcroft Polls has announced an estimate for the election result. He updates it at intervals on his website. Electoral Calculus maintains a running projection of seats according to latest polls on its website. It also maintains a seat-by-seat projection for Scotland. Election Forecast also maintains a projection of seats based on current opinion poll averages on their website. Elections etc. issues regular forecasts based on current opinion poll averages, betting markets, expert predictions and other sources on their website. YouGov issue daily seat estimates using their aggregated statistical election model. Britain Elects maintains a nocast, a projection showing what the result would be if held today, of seats based on historical data as well as national and regional polling. Exit poll An exit poll, conducted by GfK and Ipsos Mori on behalf of the BBC, ITV and Sky News, was published at the end of voting at 10 p.m. predicting the number of seats for each party, with the Conservatives being the largest party, but short of an overall majority. Actual results were close to the prediction. Results for all constituencies except Kensington were reported by the morning after the election. The Conservatives remained the largest single party, but without a parliamentary majority. One of the few polling companies to correctly predict the result was YouGov, which had employed a different and controversial methodology. In England, Labour made a net gain of 21 seats, taking 25 constituencies from the Conservatives and 2 from the Liberal Democrats. The Conservatives experienced a net loss of 22 seats. They gained Clacton from UKIP and Southport from the Liberal Democrats in addition to the 6 gains from Labour. The Liberal Democrats took 5 seats from the Conservatives, including Twickenham, one back by Vince Cable, and Kingston and Surbiton, one by Ed Davey, but lost 2 seats to Labour, Leeds North West and Sheffield Hallam, the seat of former party leader Nick Clegg. Richmond Park, which the Liberal Democrats had won in a 2016 by-election, was narrowly lost to the Conservatives. Caroline Lucas remained the sole Green Party MP, holding Brighton Pavilion. In Scotland, the Conservatives, Labour and the Liberal Democrats all won seats from the SNP, whose losses were attributed to opposition to a second Scottish independence referendum, contributing to tactical voting for unionist parties. The Conservatives placed second for the first time since 1992, won their largest number of seats in Scotland since 1983 and recorded their highest share of the vote there since 1979. With 13 seats, the Scottish Conservatives became the largest unionist party in Scotland for the first time since 1955. Labour gained 6 seats from the SNP while the Liberal Democrats gained 3. Having won 56 of 59 Scottish constituencies in the last election, the SNP lost a total of 21 seats, and majorities in their remaining remaining seats were cut drastically. High-profile losses included SNP Commons leader Angus Robertson in Moray and former party leader Alex Salmond in Gordon. In Wales, Labour held 25 seats and gained Cardiff North, Gower and Vale of CLWYD from the Conservatives, leaving the Welsh Tories with 8 seats. Plaid Cymru held its 3 existing seats and gained Ceredigion, the Lib Dems' only constituency in Wales. In Northern Ireland, the SDLP lost its 3 seats of South Belfast to the DUP, and Foyle and South Down to Sinn Féin. The UUP lost its 2 seats of South Antrim to the DUP and Fermanagh South Tyrone to Sinn Féin. The Alliance Party won no seats and failed to win East Belfast back from the DUP. Out of 18 seats, the DUP won 10, up from 8, Sinn Féin 7, up from 4, and independent unionist Sylvia Herman held North Down. The results left the DUP as kingmakers, and May announced that she intended to form a minority government with their support. Sinn Féin, who recorded their best result since partition, subsequently confirmed it would maintain its policy of abstentionism, leaving the Conservatives 5 seats short of a sitting majority. Their abstentionism in the circumstances was criticized by various people, including Michael Martin, leader of Fianna Fáil in the Republic of Ireland, who also noted the resultant lack of nationalist representation in the House of Commons. UKIP failed to win any seats, with its vote share falling from 12.6 in the previous general election to just 1.8. Paul Nuttall, who came third in Boston and Skegness, resigned as party leader the day after the election. The Greens dropped from 3.7 to 1.6. The result was noted for increased vote shares for Labour, up 9.6 percentage points, and the Conservatives, up 5.5 percentage points, with a combined 83 share of the vote, up from 67 in 2015. The election was characterized by higher turnout, particularly amongst younger voters, contributing to Labour's increased vote share. It was suggested that UKIP's decline boosted both main parties, but tended to help Labour retain seats in the north of England and the Midlands against the Conservatives. Overall proportionality The disproportionality of Parliament in the 2017 election was 6.45 according to the Gallagher Index. This is the first time the index has dropped below 15 in the UK in the current century. Diversity Newly elected MPs included Britain's first turbaned Sikh MP, Tan Desi, the first female Sikh MP, Preet Gill, and the first MP of Palestinian descent, Layla Moran. A record number of female and LGBTQ MPs were elected. 201 female MPs were elected to Parliament, the first time more than 200 MPs were female and beating the previous high of 196 female MPs in the last Parliament. For the first time, a majority of MPs were educated at state comprehensive schools. More MPs who are known to be disabled were elected in 2017 than in 2015. Seats which changed allegiance aftermath government formation Corbyn and Farron called on May to resign. On the 9th of June, May apologized to candidates who lost their seats and confirmed she would continue as party leader and prime minister, with the intention of forming a minority government with support from the Democratic Unionist Party in order to ensure certainty. May's Joint Chiefs of Staff Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill resigned, replaced by Gavin Barwell, who had lost his seat in the election. On the 10th of June, a survey of 1,500 Conservative home readers found that almost 2/3 of Conservative Party members wanted Theresa May to resign. A YouGov poll of 1,720 adults for the Sunday Times had 48 saying Theresa May should resign, with 38 against. A Survation poll of 1,036 adults online for the Mail on Sunday had 49 of people wanting her resignation, with 38 against. On the 11th of June, George Osborne, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, described May as a dead woman walking. In a post-election reshuffle carried out on the 11th of June, May promoted her close ally Damian Green to become first Secretary of State and brought Michael Gove into the cabinet as Environment Secretary, making Andrea Leadsom leader of the House of Commons. Liz Truss, David Liddington and David Gauke changed roles, while 11 cabinet members including key figures such as Boris Johnson, Amber Rudd, Michael Fallon, Philip Hammond and David Davis remained in post. Negotiations between the Conservatives and DUP started on the 9th of June, and continued over the weekend and into the following week. On the 12th of June, it was reported that the state opening of Parliament, scheduled for the 19th of June, could be delayed for a few days because of ongoing talks between the Conservatives and DUP. On the 15th of June, it was announced that the opening speech would occur on the 21st of June. Other parties' leadership After achieving just 1.8 of the popular vote, down from 12.7 in 2015, and failing to win any seats, Paul Nuttall resigned as UKIP leader on the 9th of June. A leadership election will follow. Brian Paddick resigned as Home Affairs spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats over concerns about Farron's views on various issues during the campaign. Later that day, Farron announced his resignation as leader of the Liberal Democrats, citing conflict between his faith and serving as leader. He remains as leader until a successor is chosen in a leadership election. Ian Blackford became the new SNP leader in Westminster following Angus Robertson's defeat. Notes references external links voting registration UK government register to vote electoral commission your vote matters party manifestos Conservative Party Labour Party SNP Liberal Democrats DUP Sinn Féin Plaid Cymru SDLP UUP UKIP Green Party news sites BBC News Politics UK General Election 2017 British House of Commons results in full